Tonight, a team of reporters will honor the families of Flight 3407. We begin with News 4's Luke Moretti.
It's the worst nightmare any family could have.
And all along in your heart, you feel this was preventable.
Amid their grief and unimaginable heartbreak came a sense of purpose.
And changes will be made.
Almost immediately, the families of Flight 3407 started mobilizing. Something went terribly wrong aboard the Continental Connection flight from Newark, New Jersey to Buffalo that February night in 2009.
Either state police or sheriff's department need to find out if anything is on the ground. This aircraft was 5 miles out, and all of a sudden we have no response to that aircraft.
In this case, I don't see any evidence that he ever understood the situation he was in.
Pilot error was one of the chief causes that led to the deadly crash in Clarence Center, according to federal investigators. The National Transportation Safety Board concluded that the pilot's performance was likely impaired by fatigue.
I think this crew went from complacency to catastrophe in 30 seconds.
Yes.
And they didn't see it coming.
The families made calls and visits to Congress and met with President Obama to advocate for aviation safety improvements. They were in Washington for NTSB hearings on the crash.
I think that, and I told the families this, we prayed together. And shared our thoughts. The focus on this terrible tragedy is going to, I think, galvanize not just the families here, but many of us in the Congress and the American people to demand that serious changes be made.
They knew it would not be easy, but that did not stop them.
Washington's a very tough place, and the bureaucracy beats you down and beats you down until you give up. And the challenge is not to give up.
There's the Federal Aviation Administration, which has been criticized over the years for not acting fast enough on safety recommendations issued by the NTSB. Mary Schiavo, formerly an Inspector General of the U.S. Department of Transportation, has been critical of the agency for that reason. She came to Buffalo along with other airline safety advocates not long after the 2009 crash.
Real bottom line is always money. They're afraid it will cost the manufacturers or the airlines money, and they really don't like to do that.
Schiavo was joined by Bob Manetti, who lost his son in the 1988 Pan Am flight disaster over Lockerbie, Scotland.
It takes people like us, and hopefully other people, to get them to do the things that they're supposed to do.
It would take a citizens' army to effect real change. And in the closing days of 2011, nearly 3 years after the crash, there would finally be some light emerging from the darkness.
We really have addressed the major issues that the family asked us to address, and concerns that people have had for 25 years that have worked on this rule. This is a big deal today. It's a big deal because for 25 years, people have been talking about this and haven't done a dang thing about it. And we have.
The FAA came out with new rules aimed at combating pilot fatigue. The long fight for new safety standards struck a chord with federal regulators.
This is a great day for aviation safety.
The 3407 families who lost the most finally broke through the layers and layers of government bureaucracy.
The rule that we're announcing today is, I think, the very best safety rule for the flying public, for people who get on these regional planes in communities like Buffalo or Peoria, Illinois, and entrust their lives to pilots who they believe are well-trained and well-rested.
Among other things, the rules would limit the maximum time a pilot can be scheduled to be on duty and require that pilots receive a minimum of 10 hours rest between duty periods. Safety advocates have been urging the FAA for over 2 decades to update pilot work rules, but previous efforts stalled. The crash of Flight 3407 revived the debate, and the families would not give up.
It took a long time. It shouldn't have been this long, but, you know, at least we've crossed the finish line. In terms of pilot fatigue, The world will be a different, better, and safer place, and it wouldn't have happened without the families.
National Transportation Safety Board Chairman Deborah Hersman said of the families, they demonstrated so much grace after suffering such terrible losses by supporting one another and creating an incredible force of dedicated, caring people who had one joint goal, to ensure that no other families would experience what they had.
Their presence in Washington was consistent, was fiercely determined, but always respectful. And what they were able to do in 2.5 years, the National Transportation Safety Board wasn't able to do in 2 decades.
The new fatigue rules won't cover cargo carriers, but will apply to passenger airline pilots nationwide, once fully implemented in a couple of years. It's a major shift caused by a major force known as the families of Flight 3407.
People who fly commuter airlines will be a lot safer as a result of the actions of the families, because now the rules for pilots at commuter airlines are going to be exactly the same as they are for the major airlines, and that's a huge, huge change.
Justine Krasuski, whose husband Jerry died in the crash, summed it up this way.
It is a day to celebrate. No, it won't bring our loved ones back, but we will celebrate and knowing that they did not die in vain.
For John and Marilyn Kausner and so many of the 3407 families, the holidays without their loved ones are especially difficult, knowing their deaths could have been prevented.
We lost our loved ones because of bad practices, both in training and certainly fatigue. Practices that the pilots and the NTSB have been trying to change for 25 years.
Ellie Kausner would have turned 27 12 days before Christmas, but her young life was cut short by the crash of Flight 3407. But Ellie continues to be the inspiration behind the Kausners' tireless drive to make flying safer for us all.
I'm here because of Ellie. Fully cognizant of the fact that I'm, without a doubt, she would be there if one of us was on that plane.
Public hearings such as this are exercises in accountability.
With their loved ones always in mind, the families of Flight 3407, some traveling to Washington more than 40 times, won their first battle to strengthen aviation safety rules. The first victory was in combating fatigue in the cockpit.
This is a big deal today. This is as far as our government has ever gone.
Coming together as a group made all the difference, says Marilyn Kausner.
If John and I had to confront the truth of how our daughter died alone, I think our temptation might have been to withdraw and just be angry.
Jim Neal, who lost his daughter Jennifer in the crash, wanted to make sure no families grieved alone. He hugged them and prayed for them constantly, giving them comfort, even while enduring his own pain.
By strangers who smile and nod to us, who come and embrace and hug us. It's something that's hard to explain in words, Rich, but that's our great solace.
Jennifer was carrying a child. This was the last picture taken of her.
6 or 7 hours before her death. And she was displaying a picture of her sonogram baby.
Ernie West had 2 beautiful years with his daughter Summer before he lost his life in the crash.
With our daughter being so young, we were looking forward to each Christmas being, wide-eyed and innocent, and actually reliving our youth through her.
Wow. This home video was taken less than 2 months before the crash. 3 Christmases later, the families have reason to believe their efforts will lead to real changes in aviation safety rules and that their loved ones will not have died in vain.
Yeah, that was a nice Christmas surprise. I didn't expect that one. There's still a lot more work to go, but it's nice to actually have, something for once said, okay, these are the rules. This is what we're going to implement.
Many of the families feel the presence of their loved ones as they move forward with their cause. Some believe their loved ones are looking down from a better place with great approval.
Are clapping and smiling and saying, look what you've done, not just for us, but for the whole of the country.